This character was created for a real game, so the first thing I'm going to show you is that it works in a real game. In this scene, the assets are not included, other than the character and all of his animations. However, I do have a locomotion plugin that can recreate this behaviour. As you can probably tell, it is intended to mimic other popular titles of a similar nature. And now we show you the functionality that is included. The environment is made by Nick Cockman on Unreal Engine Marketplace. If you just search for Stylescape, you can find this. Notice how the character automatically blinks at intervals, and if you stand still long enough he has idle board animations, and all that logic is included. So now we're going to go over what's actually included with Hilbert. So you get some weapons. You get the armor on its own, the body on its own, and you get a combined version. Every model has 3 LODs. There is an animation overview video. If you want to see these animations, I recommend checking out that video. And there's also a tutorial map, so if I just go play, we have our character, we have a bunch of weapons that dropped just to mark out where each text is. So it just explains what each blueprint does. So if we open the blueprint folder, there's 4 blueprints. The BP Hilbert controller example is just there to assign our camera manager. The camera manager controls the camera fade, so notice how when we go play, it fades in. That's a camera manager doing it. And I can turn the camera all the way up like this, like in default Unreal, but if I go down, I can only go so far before it actually clamps it. Now because the ground's actually blocking me, you can't see it too well. But normally I could go all the way under the character, and I've just clamped it to cut out that behaviour. Hilbert example is the character you are playing as. Look at that. Watch his eyes, he blinks randomly. And you can see more in the animation blueprint. Stay still to play a random board animation. It's on a small timer of 5 seconds. It will never play the same one twice in a row if you have 3 or more animations. So if we just wait a while, play the next one. And there's another, but we may get the sitting one again because it doesn't make sure to rotate them, it just randomizes. Oh, there it is. So you can see when we stop, he does that little skid. You don't get it when you are pivoting or changing directions. You could build that behaviour if you wanted to. When he jumps, his jumping pose is based on how far away he is from the ground. It's quite subtle, but you'll notice as he goes to land, his foot extends outwards. He has crouching animations, which he just ducks down and covers his head with his shield. This was based on one of the mechanics from the original game, where you could press jump while crouching and do a little shield book to parry overhead attacks. Oh, and the other thing is, if I just press left or right, notice how the camera orbits. In fact, it orbits quite excessively. But there are parameters where we can control that in the character. So if we open the character up, there's a disclaimer: the bow and quiver are hidden in game because they overlap the sword and shield. So if we went to sword and shield and set those to hidden in game, then we can come to the quiver, the arrows and the bow and uncheck that. And now if we compile and play, we have a bow and arrow instead. Of course, this isn't how you would ordinarily change your equipment, it's just there so you can do as you please. I'm just going to set that back to how it was. Now, if we come to the event graph, anything in blue is different. So, or anything that isn't just a white comment is different. So this stuff here you get with a standard character. But this here is a functionality for orbiting the camera. So I can turn the orbit rate down to say 10, and now when I go play, it doesn't orbit much, just a little bit. So it's up to you how subtle you want it, and you can also give it an interpolation rate. At the moment it's exceedingly high, so you barely get any interpolation, but that's fine. So we're back to having a high orbit rate. And you'll notice when you walk towards the camera, it doesn't orbit. It's only when you walk away or to the sides of the camera. It's much nicer behaviour in my opinion. So you'll see how that logic was built. And you'll just see the whole basic setup for yourself if you buy it. So, come to the character. He has inadequately convincing physics assets. If it simulate, then you know if you ragdoll this character, you're going to get behaviour that more or less makes sense. But of course there is no ragdoll functionality built in. If you buy Move It, it has all the ragdoll functionality. If I come into the animation blueprint, you can see how it handles the board idle animations, the blinking, even just the leaning when he's running. And you'll just see how it handles skidding. You see there's actually a lot more to the, or skidding or stopping, whatever you want to call it. You see there's a little more to it than you might imagine, because there are certain variables you need to consider. Gets a distance to the ground for the animations, it updates the states, and there's a little extra, like it's got a trail controller for the tassets on the helmet and also for the beard, but it's quite subtle. It even drives the visor a little bit just to give it a bit of a bounce. And these effects are really just subtle and toned down to the point that you probably won't even notice it unless you're looking for it, or unless you go into those modes and drastically increase the effects that they have. The other thing is his skeleton. If you open it up, you see his pose isn't really an Unreal pose, but if you just go view pose, you notice he does actually have a proper retarget pose. So if you have Unreal Engine animations, you can retarget them to this character accurately. His proportions are quite different, so whether they look good or not, it's up to the animation really. And the only other thing to show, I think, is so you know there's a bow, a shield, and a sword. All of these textures, they go together. So you can see they're all good quality. They're all packed properly. So you've got the metallic, the roughness, the ambient occlusion all packed together. It is a high quality asset and it is battle tested. Thank you very much for watching.